Yeah, hang on just a second. Yeah, okay. And I also just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon for the final episode or the final part of Lama Tsultrim Yeshe's program on liberating yourself through self-reflection. And Lama, we want you to tell this story about Rinpoche at the beginning because I want to hear all about it.
Yes, so this is, I believe it was 2011, and Khenpo Karka Rinpoche was invited to teach in Taiwan. And so Lama Karma was with us, and a number of the Karmeling Lamas were with him. And the Taiwanese people were very receptive to Rinpoche. This was not the first time he had toured Taiwan, and it wasn't the last time. But to give you an idea of the reception, that he gave a White Tara empowerment, and it was in Taipei, and 700 people attended it. I have never seen 700 people attend an empowerment of his in the United States. They had to have it in videos in different rooms because not all 700 people could get in the shrine room. And the Taiwanese people were very generous. And they gave me as being one of, his, I don't know if you would say attendants, let's say part of the retinue. Uh, they would make offerings to the monks and the nuns, and then Lama Karma would divide them up equally. But they would also make personal offerings to me. And I would make offerings to Rinpoche, but I would do it in secret to him, where they would have a box when you would come up to offer a kata, and then I would put the envelope in the box so Rinpoche wouldn't see it, you might say, wouldn't know who it came from. But the last day that I was there, Rinpoche was still going to stay another week or so. And so I had taken the offerings that had been given to me, and a person, a Taiwanese person there, took them from the rest of us, and then took them to a bank and exchanged them for American dollars. Well, even after this being the same day, I still kept getting offerings. And so before I left for the airport, I stuck them into an envelope and then went to Rinpoche's room, knocked on the door, and offered them to Rinpoche. And so he took the envelope, opened it up, and counted the money before he would accept it. That it was, I guess, a small enough offering that he would accept it. And I have seen him do this kind of thing before, and this was one reason why I did make these other offerings in secret. So that is my story about Rinpoche and offerings. Now I am going to continue with my talk. And while I was eating and taking a break, I did a brief search of the internet of the phrase, the manure of our experience, which is something that when I came in contact with the 7 points of mind training, you might say I was introduced to right away. And needless to say, I really understood this. Not as deeply as I do now, but I could relate to my experience in the past being manure. And the point is that if we looked at our past experience, and when I say past experience, I mean anything previous to the present moment as being a crap, It's a problem. It can be a huge problem. And I'm trying to use nice words here since I'm being recorded and I'm a Lama and I'm supposed to talk nicely. However, if we look at it as manure, and I live in a rural area, and I have gardened, and I have kept animals. And when you have animals, you have manure. Just like if you live in samsara, you have got manure that you experience. But if we look at it as manure, it becomes a resource for growth. And if you look at it as manure and a resource, suddenly you realize you are wealthy in resources. You just have to know how to work with manure in a way to promote growth. That's all. It's actually very organic, very environmentally sustainable. And the thing is, we don't even have to go around collecting manure, that it arrives on our door delivered. Another point of this is that you have to be careful what you do, because the world might look at you very differently. And the reason why I say this is the origin of the word crap, that it comes from Thomas Crapper, who maybe you don't know about, but he is the inventor of the modern flush toilet. And he has been immortalized forever. And I won't go into that. But I suspect that the word Trump in 10 years is going to be looked at very differently than it is today. So with that, I got on the internet and did a little search of that phrase, the manure of our experience. And I immediately came to an article by Traleg Rinpoche on the 7 points of mind training. And he quotes in there Padma Karpo, who lived 1527 to 1592. And here is the quote: "If you look closely at your normal activities, you will discover that they do not deserve the trust you accord them. If you are not the agent, you are not the agent in power, but the victim of your projections. Don't you think you should look closely into that? Please turn your mind within and reflect on this." So that's a good introduction to this afternoon. And from Tralag Rinpoche's book, The Practice of Lojong, this is part of what he says about this slogan about liberate yourself through examination and analysis. Quote, "A detective will investigate a particular case and then examine the evidence, analyzing the crime in both general and specific terms. If we approach our mental processes in this manner, we will solve many of our problems and clarify much of our confusion. Learning to know our minds honestly and fearlessly through these methods will liberate us from self-obsessive thoughts and overcome mental dullness." And so we need to have mental clarity for us to have this process work effectively. And I talked about meditation already, but I want to stress this again this afternoon, that it is very, very important to have mental clarity. And meditation is an excellent tool for us to use to develop that mental clarity. And this is not something that once you have developed some mental clarity, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. I think the example would be like with your car, putting it on cruise control. We can't put our lives on cruise control. We need regular practice of some kind or another. And when we are examining our lives, now some of these I've touched on already, but I'm going to go over it again just a little bit. We have to have the courage to let fearful and frightening memories arise. We have to have the courage to let thoughts of, I'm a bad person, I'm a piece of crap, I'm always screwing up, da, 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 da. To let those arise, but then work with them, and again, see them as just memories. That what happens is we spend our lives planning for the future, filling up the present with primarily trivial behavior and living in the past. And my definition of a plan, by the way, for those of you that haven't heard it, is a well thought out fantasy. And in fact, sometimes that isn't even well thought out, that plan. That actually, if you want to get from A to B, instead of having a direct road from A to B, what you really find is that you are constantly having to readjust for the present situations. And when you finally get to B, then you know how to get from A to B at that time, the way you did it. But it had the element of continually readjusting to what the present situation is, rather than having a plan and following it to the letter. This is why there is plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and so forth, right down the alphabet. Samsara, and life doesn't work that way. It's constantly changing, and it's due to karma and conditions that are brought about by karma, interdependent conditions. So first of all, we have to realize that plans are just fantasies, and that the past is in the past. The Tibetans will say the past is like a rotten seed. Nothing can grow from it. And we have to make room in the present for us to be able to experience things in the present, So the next point that I want to go into is that we have 5 unreasonable expectations of life. And quite honestly, I do not know where I got these from. The first 4 I got from some other Tibetan teacher. I don't think it was Rinpoche. But when I read them, it was like, oh, and so I like to share them with people. I'm assuming, perhaps unnecessarily, that you might be able to relate to these too. The first is I am the most important person in the room. That other people, they might be important, but when push comes to shove, definitely I'm the most important person. The second is I should be respected. Other people need to earn my respect, but I don't have to earn other people's respect. I should be just respected because of who I am. The third is other people should live up to my expectations. And now I was married for 21 years. And I will have to say that looking back on that marriage, there were times, I'm not going to say how often, but there were times that I would feel not only should my wife live up to my expectations, but she should know them without me even telling her. But that can go in relationships that have nothing to do with marriage or a partner. It can be work. Could be as simple as a clerk in the store. Uh, the next is that I should not be harmed in any way, physically, mentally, at work. When I have an idea, why is it that people continually shoot me down? This sort of thing. I could talk about driving and drivers. It seems to me that driving is a great opportunity to practice the slogans of mind training, exchanging self for other. But it's amazing how quickly when someone does something like cut in front of you or whatever, and bang, there you go. This should not be happening to me. I remember one time many years ago, but this was after I had started practicing Buddhism, that I was in, there was road construction going on. And there was this big traffic jam. And out here, the big traffic jam is much different than in Columbus. But for me, it was a big traffic jam, and it was a town of about maybe 15,000. And these people kept going by me on the right, on the shoulder, minute after minute after minute. And I'm getting angry at these people because I know what they're doing is getting ahead and then cutting in front. And this is just delaying me even more. Well, as the lane I was in progressed further and further and further, I saw what was going on. And what was going on is that there was a right turn here, and people were then taking that right turn and going a different direction. And they weren't cutting in front. And then all of a sudden, my anger disappeared. My irritation disappeared. Much of life is like that, that these things would be a good way to use them as a way to develop patience, tolerance, to quit listening to this subconscious gossip, quit being controlled by your conflicting emotions, and so forth. So that's about, I shouldn't be harmed. A lot of times we think we're being harmed, but in reality, we're not being harmed. That what we're perceiving is totally incorrect. And then a lot of times, maybe we think we are being harmed, but we can use it to develop patience and so forth. In Tibetan Buddhism, traditionally, they don't talk about forgiveness. They talk about developing patience. And there's nothing to forgive. The problem is you're not patient with whoever it is that you're angry at. So the last one then is, I mentioned already this morning, and that is life should be fair. And I'm the one that decides what is fair. Now, of course, all of this is very unrealistic. It's just incredibly unrealistic. So what I am talking about here is we need to examine when kleshas arise, especially in this case, anger, irritation, resentment, and so forth. Are any of these unreasonable expectations coloring our perception? And then if you find them, look more deeply. Again, like a detective would examine a case, get the evidence together, and then analyze in very specific terms. You know, have I done this in the past? Why is this a habitual pattern? If it is a habitual pattern, and are there things that I can do to remedy this, and so forth. What happens is that we involve blame into our daily experience. And with these 5 unreasonable expectations, it's permeated with blame. But now when you're examining yourself, an easy road to go down is blaming yourself, seeing your faults, thinking, not only have I done this here, and this is wrong action, but I've done it there, and I've done it there, and I've done it there. And in fact, I've spent my whole life doing all kinds of bad things. I must be a bad person. And what you're doing here is you're not seeing clearly. You're not recognizing your Buddha nature. What happens when you blame yourself and start thinking that you are a bad person, then it leaves you powerless, because if you're a fundamentally bad person, there's nothing you can do about it. As opposed to you are a person with Buddha nature that have engaged in some negative behavior of body, speech, and mind. And we're talking about this particular instance, not your whole life story. You bring a resume to it of how you have been bad and made a career out of being bad. And we're just talking about a particular instance. So when you have this whole story, this resume about being a bad person, it leaves you powerless, it leaves you helpless, and it leaves you hopeless. And it frequently leaves you depressed and angry at yourself. And that is a place then that you are definitely imprisoned and there's no way out. So it's important to realize the difference between regret and guilt. That guilt is wallowing in the blame. Regret is recognizing this action and then wanting to do something about the action. So there's a huge difference here. The regret empowers you. The guilt and the blame leaves you powerless. With regret, you can change. With guilt and blame, you can't change. With regret, it's manure that you can use for growth. So with that point, I think it'd be a good time for some questions, and then I will return to the talk.
There are no questions currently posted in the chat, but anyone can now unmute themselves and ask a question if you'd like.
This is a question for the KTC Columbus. I regret that I screwed up with the timing and I just signed in, and clearly from the last 5 minutes that I heard, this would be a very valuable teaching for me, and I'm wondering if it's being recorded and if it will be available for me to fix that and see the first part of the teaching.
I can answer that question for you, Leilani, and don't worry about timing. I tell you what, we're all human beings. This happens. We are recording, so you're in luck, and it will be made available on the Columbus KTC YouTube page tomorrow. So,
awesome.
So yeah, so we've got you covered. We've got you covered. And in fact, we'll also send an email out tomorrow to all participants so that they have the links to all 3 of the videos from this program. I'm really happy you're attending, and yeah, we're sorry about the timing, but I'm glad you're here.
I just got 1 o'clock stuck in my head and forgot that I'm an hour ahead of you. So sorry. I'll have questions, though, I'm sure, Lama Yeshe. Thank you.
Well, I will add to this that Leilani is a member of the Hay River KTC and the Minneapolis KTC, and that I have been known to give teachings like this other places, and I will do something like this at my center in the future. I think that this is something that's really very important for Western students to hear, because this seems to be a place that so many Westerners are at when they come to Buddhism, and of course bring with them from experiences earlier in life.
Lama Yeshe, I received a question to read to you, and it says, would you recommend using these 5 unreasonable expectations in the reflection before daily confession and renewal of bodhisattva vows?
Well, that's interesting. I would definitely say it would be good to contemplate them from time to time, and that would be a good time to contemplate them. And obviously, I haven't gotten this far, but the remedy when you have regret is to confess and do a confession practice, which involves reliance. So like visualizing Karmapa in front of you, Khenpo Karta Rinpoche in front of you, the Buddha, an object that you would like to confess to, and then having regret. I like to talk about it in terms of the 4 R's. When I was young, it was the 3 R's. Now I'm older and a Buddhist, and it's the 4 R's. So reliance on an outer object that you hold in high esteem and have devotion for, regret for the action or particular actions, and then the remedy is the confession prayer. And sometimes it's mantra, like Vajrasattva's mantra. And the 4th R is resolve, resolving, I will not do this again in the future. And when you do it again because of your habitual patterns, then go back and do it all over again. So if you would like to contemplate those 5 or any one of those 5, I think that would be excellent. I'm not saying to do it all the time or do it the rest of your life, but it's good to contemplate them, just like it's good to contemplate the 4 thoughts: karma, precious human birth, impermanence, and the unsatisfactory state of any of the realms in samsara.
There are no other questions in the chat right now.
Do you want to read them to me?
Sorry, there are no other questions in the chat
Oh,
right now.
no other questions. Okay, well, if there are no other questions in the chat and nobody here wants to ask a question, then I will get back to my my talk. So what's really important in working with our minds is to take the middle way, which is not too harsh and not too permissive. That we need to nourish ourselves. We need to encourage ourselves to grow. And instead of punishing ourselves, it's really better to reward ourselves. And when you do confession, you might say you're rewarding yourself because you are eliminating the negative karma that will cause you to suffer in the future. So don't beat yourself up. Purify your negative actions. Beating yourself up just leads to being in the same place year after year after year, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And then ask yourself, do I want to repeat this lifetime, next lifetime? Or maybe I won't even be fortunate enough to have a human birth, or my human birth might not even be as nice as this time around. So keep these things in mind. It's interesting that since retiring, I have continued to go into the prison as a volunteer, teaching Buddhism and meditation to the inmates. And since I retired, they have introduced a service dog program where selected inmates are given a young dog. You could say I think it's a little older than a puppy, but not much older than a puppy. And they are, you might say, the ones that are going to be training this service dog first. They're not training it to be a service dog. They're taming the dog. I think this is a good analogy. And what they are taught is never punish the dog. Have plenty of doggy treats. And give the dog rubs and pats and talk kindly to the dog. And when the dog behaves the way you want it to behave, give it a reward, a doggy treat, a rub, a compliment, or whatever. And we need to treat ourselves that way to a certain extent. That one inmate told me this. He said, "I'm very good at being bad. I don't know how to be good." And I think that speaks volumes, that we're actually very good at being confused samsaric beings, but we're having trouble having bodhicitta, having loving kindness towards ourselves and having loving kindness towards others. That if we don't know how to love ourselves, we don't know how to love other people. We might pretend that we love other people while we are hating ourselves, but it's all pretend. It's not the real thing. And so really looking within and working with our minds is learning how to love ourselves, how to be kind to ourselves. And instead of punishing, to encourage ourselves to do better. When I started realizing how much anger I had towards myself after doing some practice for I can't tell you how long it was. It was long before I did a 3-year retreat, but a friend of mine gave me a little, it probably was a computer printout. This is back in the late 80s, and he gave it to me as a joke. And it said, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And then in small letters was the management. And so he thought this was just absolutely hilarious. Well, I stuck that on the bulletin board in my kitchen, and I'm living alone, and people would come and visit me and say, "You live alone. What's this all about?" And I said, "Well, I've got a manager." And this is his approach. And what I did is I kept it up for years, because when I found that I was taking that approach of punishing myself, being angry at myself, thinking that I'm a piece of crap, I would look at that, and it might take a week, but eventually I would start laughing at that approach, seeing how ridiculous it was. And so here is another story about Khenpo Karka Rinpoche, and this is from retreat. So I did something in the shrine room. I asked him a question. And I realized that this question was just permeated with egotism, my ego. And his answer was, "This is not what we're talking about." A very nice answer. But at that point, I started beating myself up with, "Oh, I'm such an egotistical person. I'm an idiot, da, 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 da." And I went down that line for a long time. I can't tell you how long. It could easily have been 24 hours. But then I came down for lunch, and I walked by Rinpoche. And again, Rinpoche knew me like an open book. I knew this right from the start. So I'm walking by him, and he's eating. And what does he do? He sticks his leg out from the chair towards me and starts shaking it at me. And of course, I laugh because it's so ridiculous. And what I realized was that he was trying to tell me, lighten up, quit beating yourself up. And we have to recognize by looking within and examining, am I beating myself up? And is this really beneficial? Am I getting anywhere here, or am I just staying in prison? So we have to avoid going that road and beating ourselves up and thinking that that is the way we improve. It will never work. Quite honestly, the warden that I worked under most of the time that I was there, even he said that punishment doesn't work. He isn't a judge. He isn't the one that sets up the rules and what the punishment should be and so on and so forth. But what works with inmates is training them to go in a different direction. And it's this way with us too. We want to liberate ourselves, and in a way, we are in our own prison, our own self-created samsaric prison. And I actually have a Tonglen practice that I developed that I call prison break. And it's working with ourselves to break out of this prison that we have created. I don't know if I have time to go into that today, but I want to go to the next thing. And that is blaming others. Because we get to this point where we've got a problem, a difficulty, and we either blame ourselves or we blame others. And when we blame others, we are, first of all, thinking one of these 5 unreasonable expectations, that this shouldn't be happening to me. And the reason why it's happening to me is because of other people or circumstances that are beyond my control. It's the system that's causing this. Whatever the system is, take your pick. There are lots of systems out there to blame. But it is beyond my control. And so then you feel like a victim. The system is screwing me. Other people are screwing me. There are conspiracies out there that I don't even, nobody knows about, but they're screwing me somehow. The cause of all my problems is outside of me. And the problem with that is being a victim. Again, it leaves you powerless. By definition, it means that other people, circumstances, and so forth have more power over you than you can deal with. And this leads to all kinds of problems being a victim. As I have said earlier, that what happens when you're a victim is you're using that to define who you are as the most important part of your identity. And so then being a victim, since you feel powerless and helpless, leads to all kinds of bizarre, harmful behavior, like wanting to get the person or whatever it is that is victimizing you. And so it's really important to be aware, to be mindful of our minds, and are we drifting into this victimhood where we are seeing ourselves as being powerless and being victimized. What is helpful is to not even view ourselves as a survivor of whatever it is, but to view ourselves as a person that experienced whatever it is that you're using to victimize yourself with. And we can always work with our minds. We can always work with how we are relating to whatever outer experiences are happening right now, or whatever has happened in the past, that it's not solid. So as Tralek Rinpoche said in that quote that I began with, that examine like a crime scene, put together facts, and then do analysis. And it's good to have a clear mind to do this. This is where shamatha comes in. But again, the way to know that your shamatha practice is working is what happens when you're not on the cushion. You could do this analysis on the cushion after a session of shamatha. But anyway, it's good from time to time to, you might say, take a break, take a time out, and look within and collect information and then analyze it. I mentioned this morning about this inmate writing down his experience, and I have done that too. And I have found it very helpful to understand what you might say, various things that I need to work on, where they are, what they are. I also tried one time, and I think this might be an interesting exercise. I'd never done this before, I'd never done it since, but this was when I was going through a lot of personal upheaval. Just before, or maybe at the beginning of coming to Buddhism, I kept a daily diary. And just wrote down what was in my mind that day. And after a month or two, I went back and started reading it. And one page, another page, another page. It was all basically the same. And it was all basically a soap opera. And I learned a lot about myself at that time. And so you might try that as an exercise. Just, keeping a daily diary, not about your profound thoughts, but what you're spending your time, what your mind is spending the day on. And another tip that I learned is that when your mind is, you might say, stuck on one particular subject, and all day long you keep going over it over and over and over again, kind of like a song that's on repeat. And that is the time when you need to have that maintenance sign on your car dashboard light up. And this is an indication that you need mental maintenance, maybe even some mental floss. And so examine, look within deeply, and let go of it. I wish I could find a copy of this cartoon. It could have been a Far Side cartoon. I really don't know. I've searched the internet and have yet to find it. But it was a cartoon of a man, and he had all these things piled on his head. It could have been like the kitchen sink and everything else. And the caption was that something to the effect that Sydney had too many things on his mind. And that's us. We go through the day and we have all these things through our minds, and we can't seem to let go of them. And so what we need to do is learn how to let go of them. Again, one remedy is Tonglen, substituting others for your own ego clinging. If you are feeling desire, the slogan is, or the advice is, to may this desire of mine be the desire of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of this desire. Or taking it further, actually visualizing somebody in front of you and taking their desire into you and then giving them any kind of peace and happiness and so forth. Freedom from desire, contentment. Could be saying mantra. It could be just changing the topic to thinking about how kind people have been to you. Gratitude is an incredibly healthy process, thinking about how people have done things that you have benefited from. And if you start thinking about that, you are going to find that you have an endless list of actions that people have done that have benefited you. They're talking about essential workers now, and these are people in the grocery store. Before, who thought about them? They're unimportant. But really, food is basic. The people that produce the food are basic. It's easy to think that food comes from a grocery store. I had a man come out here one time. It was in August, and the wild black raspberries were producing in profusion. He was from New York City. I would go out and just kind of graze like an animal. I wouldn't even put them in a bucket and bring them in the house and eat them. I would just go through and eat them. And since they did not come from a grocery store, he would not touch them. It's like, go figure. But our food comes from people and comes from the earth and the work that people do. And needless to say, I think all of us feel that food is a very important part of our daily lives. And you can start there. You can start anywhere you want to in terms of developing gratitude. But all of the things that we have that we value in our lives are related to other people. Even if you would go to a cabin out in Montana and are a survivalist, well, human beings developed the rifle that you use for hunting. They came up with the knife that you use. They came up with whatever seeds you are planting if you're not just eating meat. They came up with a technology to build a cabin, and on and on and on. Clothing, right from square one, what we are experiencing culturally, materially, and so forth is the result of what human beings have done in the past. This goes right back to Thomas Crapper. I'm very grateful to Thomas Crapper. There was an outhouse when I bought this house, It had not been used, or at least they had had indoor plumbing since 1949. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to go outside in the middle of the night when it's 20 below zero. There was a wood stove in the house when I bought the house. They had never had anything more advanced than a wood stove to cook with. And it was a beautiful old, probably 1890s wood stove. And on the right side of it was a big water reservoir, which of course was for bathing. And I like to take a bath or a shower. Just turn on the faucet. You've got hot water, cold water, you can adjust them. But all of this is a result of human beings. The house was built by human beings. The plumbing was done by human beings. The supplies came from human beings, technology and so forth. And you can just go on and on and on and on. If you look at your car, the parts are made all over the world. The raw materials come from all over the world. Through interdependence, just driving your car connects you with every sentient being on the whole planet. And so maybe on that note, it would be good to have some questions if there are any. Otherwise, I'll continue.
Right now, everyone, there are no questions waiting in the chat. So if you'd like to unmute and ask a question, you're welcome to. And you can also still post it to the chat.
Well, I'm a little bit surprised that nobody has a question. Maybe I should say something outrageous, but I'm not going to.
So, Lama, I have a question.
Sure.
I realized a little bit too late that I was not being good at writing down the those 5 errors in thinking that you described. I've got life should be fair, and I am the most important person, and then the other 3 are missing in outer space.
Well,
You
I'll tell you what, the next one, think of Aretha Franklin and her respect song. I should be respected, and other people need to earn my respect.
Ooh. Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think some of you understand what I'm saying.
Got it.
The next is other people should live up to my expectations.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, again, you know, most of us probably have never had this problem. But that is the next one. And then the last one is that I should not be harmed in any way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether it be physically, mentally, you know, people, when I'm going fast on the interstate, and there's somebody in front of me in the fast lane and they're not passing fast enough, they should get out of the way so I can go by.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, these sorts of things. I have a feeling that a lot of this has to do with samsaric confused thinking of self and other,
Right.
and shoulds. I believe Wayne Dyer said, "Don't should on yourself."
Mm, got it.
So yeah, I think shoulds are another like that dashboard light, maintenance required.
Right.
Lama Yeshe, I received a question to ask you. If you are able, if you have time, could you tell us a little more about the Tonglen as prison break practice?
Yes, yeah. Well, I could actually bring that up and we could do that. Let me see if I can find that. Um, let me, I'll tell you what, I'm not as organized as I could be. but I'm going to look for it. And
Lama, I'll take a look also. It's possible because you sent it to me in the past. I might also have it available. Let me see if I can find it for you.
okay, I'm looking for it and I'm coming up with all kinds of things.
Mhm.
So here we go. I'm going to click on it and let's see what happens.
Okay.
Bum, 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 bum. Okay. This is what I come up with. Let me see here. Oh, this isn't my prison break, I don't think, though. I'm going to have to go to, are you having any better luck, Lama?
I am not. I apologize because I do remember you sent it to me.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I got mine. So I'm going to read through this first of all, and then we will actually do it.
Okay.
So people who have experienced trauma can live in a prisoner of their past. Even though they haven't experienced trauma for years, even decades, they are behaving like it is still happening. It is a prison of habitual patterns, impulsive reactions, anxiety, compulsive behavior, self-loathing, suffering, and unhappiness. Yet it is familiar, normal, and therefore somewhat comfortable. When one experiences actual trauma, it is out of your control. If it was under your control, you could stop it. In this prison, you are in control, and the familiar seems safer. It is common in actual prisons for long-term inmates to become so comfortable in prison they are afraid of being released. This prison is no different. Like an actual prisoner, there are many different locks and matching keys to keep you from escaping. One is made of fear, fear of uncertainty. Locks can also be made of habitual patterns. Self-loathing is a third lock. One feels this familiar pattern is comfortable and safe. You can become so imprisoned and confused that you don't recognize true happiness and your suffering becomes normal. A person who had childhood trauma told me once, quote, happiness is such a vague concept. In this prison, there is an inner voice like an internet troll that is constantly giving messages like, quote, I constantly fail. I'm not as good as others. It can get nasty with thoughts like, I'm an expletive deleted idiot. I am a terrible person. I might as well kill myself. End quote. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely good and 1 being completely bad, many people rank themselves as a 2 or even a 1. They take the troll seriously and do not realize it is not an accurate picture of themselves. The key to this lock is love and compassion. This is a completely workable situation. A person in this prison-like situation needs to have the desire to escape. You cannot break out otherwise. There is no release date and no one can break in and open the lock for you. Then the troll needs to be recognized. The way out continues with learning to love yourself, not because you have earned it, but just because you are a living human being. You are as valuable as everyone else. You can learn to love yourself without having to earn it. There is a Tibetan saying, if you have a warm place in your heart for yourself, you will be comfortable wherever you go. End quote. That warm place is one of love and compassion towards yourself. There is a practice you can do to strengthen your love and compassion for yourself. Remember, you are a worthy recipient of your love and compassion. You will be happier, a kinder person with a warm place in your heart for yourself. Instead of needing love from others, you will be able to give more love to others. We can learn to nurture that warm place. Here is a simple practice or exercise in growing that warm place. This is the key to opening the lock of self-loathing. The practice is called taking and sending, Tong Len in Tibetan. It is a practice of sending love and removing suffering. It is best to sit cross-legged on a meditation cushion on the floor as when you would be meditating. It also can be done in a chair. So here comes the visualization, the actual practice. So here now I'm going to give guided instructions. Visualize you in the future, perhaps 5 minutes into the future, sitting in front of you, facing you. When you breathe in, imagine you are inhaling black smoke coming from the visualized you in front. It carries with it your suffering, your self-loathing, your stress, your anger towards yourself, any feelings of helplessness or powerlessness. Any negative feelings you have towards yourself. Everything the troll tells you is in this smoke. The smoke contains anything that you hold on to that causes you to suffer. It can be memories of painful events, situations, and people. This part is an exercise in compassion, the wish that people are free of suffering. You are a person and therefore worthy of compassion. If you don't have compassion for yourself, you cannot have compassion for others. Understanding your own suffering helps you understand others' suffering. Compassion for yourself is necessary for spiritual growth and to escape. So think about what causes you to suffer. You may become aware of other things causing you to suffer as a result of this practice. If you're doing this over a period of time, you might even want to make a list and choose different things on the list to do at different times when you do the practice. So this black smoke, which contains all of this that you want to remove from yourself, from the future you, the you want to become, you inhale that and it comes into your lungs and then dissolves and disappears, because this is a visualization and it's not physical matter. It's just a visualization in the form of light. So this does not accumulate in you. The in-breath is short since you're breathing normally. And so very quickly, we are then beginning to exhale. And so the in-breath is kind of preparing that warm spot in the heart. And now when we exhale, we are exhaling love, which is wanting ourselves and others to be happy. And again, remember that you are worthy of receiving love without earning it. It can be difficult to understand that for many people, but fondness, tenderness, warmth, non-sexual intimacy are associated with love in this practice. So in that warm place, you're treating yourself like a loving mother treats her infant. Whatever the child does, the mother responds with tenderness, warmth, fondness, and gentleness. When you exhale, breathe out white light, which goes to the you in front and soaks in, like the future you is sunbathing and soaking up the sunlight. The light carries with it contentment, satisfaction, cheerfulness, joy, well-being, lightheartedness, and forgiveness, transferring it from you in the present to the future you. So let's do that for a few minutes, beginning now. That finishes that session, and I have some good news for all of you, and that it has been 5 minutes, and you now are the future you that was in front, and the old you was in the past. So keep that in mind. I also want to say that two people that had their videos on, one, their dog had to reassure them that he or she loves them. And then there was a cat. Was that a Labrador retriever that I saw, Choki? Can you unmute yourself? He can't. Okay. Yeah, was it up or
There you
down?
go. She's a Weimaraner German short hair pointer mix.
Okay, yeah. Well, she obviously loves you.
I love them more than, I mean, they're just my savior sometimes. I love them so much.
Yes. So I'm going to tell one of my favorite dog stories, and it has to do with plans. So I had a dog that was at least half Labrador Retriever and had that lab personality of just loving people, happy, would smile when people drove up, strangers. Some dogs get defensive. A lot of them, they'll at least bark. He just would go up to the driver's side of the car, wag his tail and smile. Let me escort you into the house. And but he also had that lab, and so I had an outbuilding. I called it my zoo because there was no telling what kind of an animal you could find in there. And so this day I went into this small building, and it had a 7-foot ceiling, and there was a sparrow flying around. And I tried to shoo it out the door, and I couldn't. It kept getting to the door and then turning and flying back deeper into the building. So I thought, well, I'll bring the dog in, and the two of us will be more able to chase him out. So my dog got in there no more than 6 feet into the building, saw this sparrow flying around, jumps up like a cat and grabs it in flight in midair in his mouth, comes down, and there's not even a feather sticking out of his mouth. And I'm going, oh, that wasn't the plan. I was trying to save this poor bird. So I called him out. He lay it on the ground. I shut the door. And in about 2-3 minutes, he opens his mouth and the bird flies away. So the plan worked. But, you might say it went around the block before we got to the end. So that's my dog story and plan. And he too he was trained not to lick you in the face, but he would come very close and look at you until you pet him, because he was very attached. So any questions about that exercise?
I guess I don't necessarily have so much of a question as a comment. It's just tough to do. It's difficult to do.
That's a good sign. And the reason why I say that, it shows you that you're finding it powerful. These issues, powerful to look at and face. And so, as I said, that's a good sign. It's a bit like when you first start meditating and you find that you're just having nothing but the experience of the thoughts coming faster than you can possibly imagine. And so it's important to realize that this is workable. It's your own mind, it's workable. And that these are things that would be good to deal with, to work with and process.
Yes.
Lama
I
Yeshe.
just wish the process was prettier. And we never seem to, at least in my experience, I never seem to the outcome never seems as grand, because I always feel like it's been so much tough to get here. You think the reward would feel so much greater than it does, but it really doesn't. And I guess that's really kind of points to an expectation and a misguided expectation I might have of my own progress.
Yeah, this is what I would say. Again, these comments are really good. And, you can go online, you can go to YouTube, and you can find meditation practices where they have these beautiful outdoor pictures and this beautiful music and da, 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 da. Yeah, that's not what the Buddhist path is all about. It is about working with the manure of our experience. And it's really good work to do, but we have to realize that it isn't necessarily going to be pretty and bliss and wonderful. And I'm always suspicious of people that tell me that that's how their meditation goes. Not many people tell me that either, by the way. But
Lama Yeshe?
yes, go ahead.
I don't know if that could be helpful, but I don't recall exactly where I picked this up. It may have been in past teachings with even Carter Rinpoche or some readings, but there's an aspect that hasn't been discussed, is the way we talk to ourselves when we're doing meditation and stuff like this. As an example that I clearly remember is, if I say I'm angry, it kind of defines me completely as a human being, my mind, my body. I'm angry. If I say I feel anger, I think it changes the whole dialogue I'm entertaining with myself, in the sense that feeling anger, I mean, then I can get to work as you were describing earlier. I probably in an easier fashion. I don't know. I'd like your comments on this, and see if this appears to you as being a useful comment here.
Yeah, it's good to understand that what we are experiencing, what's going through our mind, is just temporary. And this is how you're feeling at the moment. It's very good to recognize that. And going back to Choki's comment, that if you find this difficult to do, this is an indication that that's where you need to do the work. That one of the other slogans of mind training is work on the most difficult mental afflictions first. Don't work on the easy ones. But if you can say that this is merely the kinds of thoughts that I'm having right now, and this is not who I am, this is the content, but this is not the container. So that's an important point, Michelle.
Lama Yeshe, there aren't any questions in the chat just this second, but there is a request if you're able to share a copy of the meditation with participants, which I think is something, if you're open to it, that Lama Kathy could do by email at a later
Yes,
time.
I will email to Lama Kathy. Actually, the version that I clicked on was longer than I had expected. I've got different versions of it. And I would gladly share it because I want it to be beneficial to other people. And I want all of you to break out of prison.
Also, Lama Yeshe, I know you have another teaching with Hay River KTC this afternoon, and it is currently 1:37 Central Time and 2:37 Eastern Time.
Yeah,
Would you like to take more questions, or would you like to go to closing prayers?
if there is interest, I can go a little bit longer. So if there is interest, you can still ask a question.
There aren't any in the chat, but if anybody has one, you can unmute.
I just wanted to say, Lama Yeshe, thank you so much for your guidance. It's so valuable. I found it so valuable. And it's definitely something that's gonna, it's gonna stick with me for a while. It provides that spiritual syllabus I've been looking for that really complements the work I do in therapy quite well, and I can't do one without the other. I'm very grateful for your guidance, and I really look forward to see how I carry this forward, and also know be able to look back to where I came from to just gain that assurance that I'm still on the right path.
Well, thank you. And I will tell you this, that since COVID, we have switched to all Zoom programs. And most of my teachings I have been posting on my YouTube channel, Lama Tsultrim Yeshe. And I don't know, I think there's something like 80 or more on there. Needless to say, they are there for people to watch. And if you would like more teachings from me, they're there and available, and we keep posting more and more. And I will be posting soon a short version on forgiveness that we did here a little while ago. And this is one thing I do like about the COVID is it's forced us to go to Zoom, and then this allows me to reach more people without traveling, and then get to have the recording, and then they get posted on YouTube. And so they are there until YouTube takes them down. And so far, they have not found my talks to be insightful, inciting, or promoting violence, and so forth. And they haven't removed a single one of them. Anyway, in fact, I just got a notice here that a person just subscribed to my YouTube channel. It might have been one of you. So that's what I can say. I've had a connection with the Columbus Center for quite a long time. And I will share this memory that I have. I remember being at a 10-day teaching that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was giving at KTD, and Lama Kathy was there, of course. He attends all of them. And they were talking about buying this church in Columbus and whether they should do it or not. And of course, Rinpoche said, yes, do it. I think they had to borrow some money to do it, but they did it. And you could say the rest is history, and here we are now. And before this started, we saw pictures of the new building in the process of construction.
True story. Absolutely true story. That was July of 1990. And we were able to get people to loan us money. And then we bought the property that new building is now located on. So yay. Thank you, Lama. And I want to let everybody know I went ahead and put the link to your YouTube channel in the chat here so people can check that out. And we will also include the link to your YouTube channel in our subsequent emails to all the participants today. So
okay.
so
Yeah, and so this is what I've been doing is Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock your time, and Eastern time zone. I have a book class, and I'm going over Tai Situ Rinpoche's book, Ground, Path, and Fruition. And that's where I got the talk on the Lama Rinpoche prayer. It was just, it was a book that, by the way, it's out of print. You can get a copy, a hard copy on Amazon for $700 if you really, or you can go and get a digital copy for $9 on Amazon. So, you can be the decider on this, whether you want to do 9 or 700. But I'm talking on that book. And actually what's coming up next is his chapter on Chenrezig practice. So go figure. And this afternoon at 3, I'm going to be talking about the wheel of life. And it's going to be going into the transformation, the fruition, transformation of confusion into wisdom. And this is the Wheel of Life Tonka painting. That's why I say Wheel of Life, as opposed to some other Wheel of Life. So on that, let's do the concluding prayers. And so you can bring them up on the screen. Om Swasti Rabjam Gyalwe Kudang Yeshe Ki Trin Le Gyam So Nam Tar Kyon Wei Wang Du Sum Kun Kien Gyal Wang Karma Pe Sha Pe Ten Shing Zai Trin Ke Par Shok De Dan Jingi Gon Po Nang Ta Ye Sam Chin Ngo Tsar Tro Pe Do Gar Ge Ten Pe Gyal San Drang Ki Gar Ge Wang Sun Me Gon Ma Rim Jo Nam La Du Si Ji Mi Pam Zun Juk Tor Je Kur Do Ne Drup Kyan Dak Tse Sul Ton Pa Cham Chen Yahweh Do Gar Si Tu Pe Sha Pe Ten Shing Zai Trien Ke Par Shok Mon Pe Wen Jom Kan Ter Chok Sol Wa Cham Yang No Nang Ten Pe Sop Shing Che Ning Me Gon Gur Jam Gon Lama Ye Sha Pe Ten Shing Zai Trien Ke Par Shok Do Me Mi Sig Tig Le Chen Po Tsel De Tong Dor Je Gar Ken Sang Wei Dak Gang Do Korna Go Shri Gyal Sa Pe Sha Pe Ten Ching Se Trin Ke Par Shok Nang Si Zil Non Jung Jir Rang Wang Jor Dor Je Kune Trin Le Kor Log Yor Pe Jung No Nang Pal Den Pa Wo Che Sha Pe Ten Ching Se Trin Ke Par Shok Se Pak Me Pe Ye Shi Gu Tro Ne Tab Ke Zap Yang Trin Le Lun Zok Pal Pen De Sa La Tre Ho Tro Pe Ku Sha Pe Ten Ching Se Trin Ke Par Shok De Tar Mi Che Gu Pe Sol Tab Du La Me Jin Lap Sem La Juk Padang Sang Sum Nam Tar Yon Ten Gam So Yun Tam Che Ma Lu Da Ki Kyon Nu Shok Pen De Pun Sok Ma Lu Jung Wei Go Gyal Wei Ten Pa Yun Du Ne Pa Dang De Jin She Dan Dru Pe Du De Kun Chu Chu Nam Chu Ja Wa Kun Pel Shok Vel To Gat So Tro Kun Ju Gi Ne De Chen Ning Po Lang So Min Gi Bar Par Che Yer Se Dri Yi Ma Go Sheng Khao sang cho den sam kun lun rup shok. Si pei de Jordan gi mi lam shin. Nok chung ning po me pei ton tok ne. Nem ner draw wei jam sho drupala. Zong me son pa chen po juk yor jik. Rang sem san jay yin par tak cho ching. Sem nip tong cha lun rup rang roll du. Tog ne kor de re do kun ral te. Chang ro dang pa yun yun top yor ji. De chen so ki ko lo tak ro pa. Yu sam Yahweh ter chen karma pa. Yab se yu par che pe si so der. Call ba call be bar du jap ten so. Gang gi zap sang sun gi sang wa la. To sam dra pe ning por che pa ye. Pon dan lok pe de nam tam che ni. Yagi chu wo ta bu ke gyo ji. Lama Rinpoche la sol wa dep. Dakshin lo yi tong war jin ge lo. Go me gyu la ke war jin ge lo. Cho mian nam to gak par jin ge lo. Rang sem ke me to par jin ge lo. Tropa rang char si war jin ge lo. Nang si cho kur to par jin je lo. Lama ku kang sang war sol wa dep. Chok tu kut se ring la sol wa dep. Rin le dar shing ge la sol wa dep. Lama dan grau wa me par jin ge lo. Paul de lama ja pe ten padang. Kang yam yon la de ki jung wa dang. Tak chen ma lu suk sab drip chang ne. Nur du san je sa la go par shon. Sanjay kusum ne pe jin lap dang. Shoni min gyur den pe jin lap dang. Yen dun ni che dun pe jin lap ke. Chi tar no wa mo lam drup yor jik. Jan pal pa wo ji tar ken pa dak. Kun tu zang po de yang de jin te. Te da kun gi je suk dak lop ching. Ge wa di da kam che rap tu no. Du shi le gao gao wei trien le pa. Karma pa ten ten pe ning po di. Chok tar kun kap kap ching gun mi che. Tak par rap pel pel wei ta shi sho. Well, that concludes today's session and I guess the program. And I just want to say how pleased I am that all of you were able to be present for this. And thank you for inviting me. And I hope that all of you find tremendous benefit from this teaching.
Thank you, Lama Yeshe.
Thank you, Lama. Thank you. It's so good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for being with us today.
All of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lama Yeshe. Good to see you again.
Yeah, keep calm and all mani pemi hung. I saw that on a t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So have a good week next week.
Okay. Yeah,
I do remember the T-shirt, Lama Cathy, that we could get at KTD a few years ago, which said keep calm and observe your mind for the
That is, yeah,
KTT.
that's a favorite. That's a favorite. Yeah, we
That's
like
my
that one.
favorite. Yeah, I should have worn it today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.
Okay,
Goodbye.
bye-bye.
Thank you.